Good morning, BSN. Thank you for joining our 19th Tuesday Zoom webinar at this early time for some. What will Good Morning BSN bring to you? It will provide you some practical tools and insights to improve your skills in one of the 4 pillars of leadership, which we at BSN believe are crucial to make a difference. Something which you will be able to apply directly in your working life after the Zoom webinar. We will end our session at 8:53 sharp to allow you to have a break before your working day starts. Today's topic is autonomy and task significance drivers of employee retention. It is all about performance leadership, which refers to the ability of leaders to effectively guide and inspire their teams to achieve high levels of performance and success. It involves various skills and qualities that contribute to optimizing individual and collective efforts towards achieving organizational goals. Good Morning BSN is organized by the BSN Impact Center for Great Leadership. The Center is an initiative of BSN, generously founded by the Culture Factor Group and sponsored by new energy company Chint Global. The Impact Center for Great Leadership is a place where BSN alumni and other managers and leaders from companies and society meet each other to share insights and to create new practical knowledge. You can also contact the Center for in-company programs to further grow the talent and teams within your organizations. Today, we're glad to have Marianne Huijskes-Nagel, who has worked at the Netherlands Public Prosecution Service for over 20 years. She led a number of organizations within the group, including legal prosecution support, IT, finance, and broad business operations. In 2018, Marianne started her executive MBA at BSN. After completing this cum laude in 2020, she started an MSc in Human Resource Management and Development at Salford University, Manchester. During this study, Marianne focused on the question, how can I as a leader have an impact on employee retention? She also completed this study cum laude in 2022. Since 2023, Marianne has been working at the Dutch Regional Water Authority, the Stichtse Rijnlanden. Here too, employee retention is an important assignment. Today, our reflector is Arthur van Geermert, and Arthur has worked in production logistics for companies like Ingram Micro, Tulip Computers, and in industries such as aluminium, office furniture, mobility, and more. Always in production and logistics and ICT. He was a tutor at Apex in master planning of resources for more than 15 years before he came to BSN. Arthur is also a designer of applications to create order in everyday chaos. And in his 20 years at BSN, Arthur has guided thousands of students in the pursuit of achieving their MBAs. Welcome, Marianne. I'm going to open the floor to you for your presentation. Arthur, if you can load the slides, please. Marianne, it's over to you now.
Yes, thank you. I'm waiting for my slide. But first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's special to do something like this. And thanks for joining, because I see a lot of participants already. First, I'd like to take the opportunity today to share with you some of my insights on employee retention. It's a complex field and cannot be done in about 15 minutes. But I'll give it a try. Hopefully you will start rethinking retention. I think that's the goal of today. My interest in employee retention started in 2019. I worked at the Public Prosecution Office and I saw a lot of people leaving. And to be honest, I did not know why they were leaving. I didn't know if it was a problem or normal. I didn't know enough about retention and how to keep good employees. And this triggered me to explore the subject of retention. So first, let's start with setting the scene about retention. What is retention? Let's start by saying there are a lot of factors that influence if people want to stay in your company or not, in your organization. But just to keep it a bit simple, retention is about influencing employees to want to stay in your company. So it's influencing and get them eager to stay. What you see in recent years is that most of the attention goes to recruitment, getting new employees, finding new employees. So one important task then is overlooked: how to keep your best employees. Early 2020 marked a dramatic shift in the way people approached work, especially in the US. We can see that the Great Resignation, it's called, it's a disruption. It was just before COVID and people quit their jobs for economic reasons, but also because they realized that purpose, work-life balance, and health were undervalued in the workplace. We see turnover rates in the US from 15 to 45%. That's high. So what you see is with employees deciding what is right for them, employers like us need to refocus on what makes it worth coming work for your organization. Bear in mind, we are in a constantly changing economy. It's changing from a labor-intensive industry to an information society, and this requires highly skilled workers and more flexibility. And know that highly skilled workers tend to commit themselves to their profession and not to their organization, as it used to be. So they will choose for their profession and change jobs easily if they don't feel treated as a professional. And from a pure financial perspective, it's smart to strive for retention because replacement costs are 7 times higher than keeping your best employees. And at least balance in recruitment and retention is important. And then a fact, did you know that pay is not the #1 reason why employees quit? It's a lack of career opportunities to develop yourself. And of course, pay is important, and it needs to be enough to be able to pay for your house, for your groceries, for your children's education. Hertzberg calls this the hygiene factor. If you don't pay enough, it will lead to dissatisfaction. But by the end of the day, people want to work at a place where they feel recognized, valued, and supported. I don't think wanting to quit is a person's natural state, just the opposite, actually. People want to work. It's in the DNA of being, growth, purpose, ambition, satisfaction, fun, you name it. So for us, it's that simple. All a successful leader needs to do to keep employees on board is fulfill a few of these basic needs. Next slide, please, Arthur. So I gave you some pictures of carrot and stick on the left. This is about motivation, because fulfilling these basic needs can be done through motivation. It's one of the driving forces behind human behavior. Motivation fuels competition, encourages social connectedness. It includes the desire to keep striving for purpose, meaning, and a life worth living. But then first we have to make a difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, as you see on the left. There's a difference because extrinsic motivation, like carrot and stick, it's about reward and punishment. It's a short-lived incentive, mostly less than 6 months. And as a manager with carrot and stick, you have to give carrots and stick all the time, and that is exhausting. However, intrinsic motivation, as you can see on the left, seems effortless because it comes from within. You appeal to the employee's own commitment, willpower, and if as a reward, it's a good feeling inside. But then the question is, how can we increase retention and motivation? And for me, the key lies in the strong relationship between job satisfaction and retention, because retention you can only measure if an employee left. So you can only measure it if it's done. And the best way to predict turnover and to increase retention is to look at job satisfaction. You can see if we increase job satisfaction, we will also increase retention. People will stay with your organization if their job satisfaction is high. So I hope, in short, this setting the scene in retention and in motivation will get us to the next slide and reflect on 2 theories. Thank you, Arthur. This is the self-determination theory. It's from Deci and Ryan. It's called the SDT. It's a theory of motivation. Deci and Ryan think that only truly intrinsic motivation is not enough to complete many tasks. So think learning in school, or looking for a job as an unemployed person, or making lifestyle changes like me, such as dieting and exercising. Intrinsic motivation is not enough. You also need some of extrinsic motivation. And Deci and Ryan found out, you see that on the left, that some extrinsic motivation can be helpful. This is called autonomously or helpful motivation. And it's driven by enjoyment or interest in a task. Think about playing music or gardening. The theory assumes that three psychological needs, as you see on the left of the sheet, are needed. They are key ingredients for intrinsic motivation: competence, autonomy, and relatedness. The first, let's start with autonomy. It's about being able to influence your social work environment. And then I don't mean that do what you want. Sometimes people think autonomy is about doing what you want, but that's a misconception. It's impossible in the workplace where you always have dependencies with other colleagues. It's about doing things the way you think as a professional is right. The second basic need is that of competence. It's the extent to your competencies are recognized and acknowledged. It's not about how much you know, but if other people see your competencies and if you get the opportunity to develop them. And finally, the third basic need is that of relatedness, namely the meaningful relationships with those around you. That you'll treat each other with trust and respect, and feel that you are heard and seen. So, in short, the theory argues that if the social environment supports these three fundamental psychological needs, people will be autonomously, helpfully motivated in doing their task. This then leads to better performance, higher well-being, and higher job satisfaction, and for that, higher retention. Next slide, please, Arthur. Reflecting on the second theory, it's the JCM, the job characteristic model. It's from Heckman and Oldham. The theory is based on the idea that the task itself is the key to employee motivation and to job satisfaction. The so-called work redesign thinking began in the 60s and focused on restructuring tasks and responsibilities to make workers more motivated. And in short, a boring and repetitive job is disastrous for motivation. And a challenging, varied job works positively on motivation. You see on the left of the sheet, the model, it mentions 5 core job characteristics that should evoke 3 psychological states: meaningfulness, responsibility, and knowledge of results. In a model, you can see how they are connected. And the result is the personal and work outcomes: high internal work motivation, that's what we talked about, high quality work performance, high satisfaction with the work, so high job satisfaction, and low absenteeism and turnover. So low turnover is high retention. From these 5 characteristics that you can see in the model on the left, I found in my research that especially autonomy and task significance have the most impact on increasing job satisfaction. So in short, the 3 others, it's skill variety, and skill variety is about doing different activities and using different skills and talents. If we talk about task identity, it's about finishing a complete process rather than small parts of a process. And then feedback. Feedback is about your manager letting you know if you do your job well, so you know the result of what you did, your tasks. And then a bit more about task significance and autonomy, the 2 drivers I think we could focus on in leadership, trying to increase retention. Autonomy, we already discussed that at the self-determination theory. It's about working independently and autonomously. For example, the freedom to plan your own working day and establish new procedures as a professional. This increases the sense of responsibility, which benefits motivation. And we are often used to autonomy in managerial positions, but also employees can get highly motivated this way. So try to look open to that. And then task significance, that's new. It's about having substantial impact on the life of other people within the organization, your colleagues, but also on society as a whole. And it leads to meaningfulness. And this can be boosted if employees can help others improve physically, financially, or psychologically. And this will almost certainly lead to a feeling that the work is more important. An example is a doctor that sees a patient recover, or a firefighter, easy examples, but a firefighter that helps putting out a fire in a home, they will immediately feel the impact on the other people. So this is about the JCN. Next slide, please, Arthur. Then we get to the key takeaways. We come to a wrap-up. What I would like to resonate with you after this presentation is that, first of all, retention is urgent. Try to think about what it means for your leadership and how you look at your organization. And if you want to improve employee retention, my advice is to use the strongest drivers, autonomy and task significance. Then, as takeaway, is the question on how we can regulate autonomy in the workplace. How do you do that? The answer is simple, trust and let go. One step to letting your employees work more autonomously is to give them more freedom in their work tasks, as we already discussed. And not just in what way they perform their task, but also when and in what order. So how the employee picks up the work as a professional, and when, for instance, every day 1 hour doing one task, or choosing to do it a whole day, once a week, it's up to the professional. And this really helps, because surely yourself have sometimes put something off because you just didn't feel like it for a while. So give autonomy. And then freedom to choose the working environment. This also contributes greatly to your employee's sense of autonomy. Of course, it's not possible to literally give space in all work environments, but we see great progress in terms of absenteeism and creativity with working from home, or from a park, or from a pub. And last but not least, let your employees do what they are good at and trust them in it. And be there for them when they need you. That's the position of the leader. It's important to ensure that your employees feel a space to make mistakes. They can make mistakes and learn from them. I always say, if you make more mistakes than I do, you won. And of course, it's not like that, but it gives a sense of trust, feeling of trust. Then the second one, how do you regulate task significance in the workplace? And the answer is simple, pride and contribution. For instance, you can arrange natural working groups to finish group tasks, so employees can discuss the process and see the impact of their work on others. Rotating jobs can have a similar effect. For me, what worked really well was working with sessions with impact. What I did is, when I worked at the public prosecution service, we had high-profile criminal cases that sometimes came on television. And what I did is that I asked the public prosecutor to present that criminal case to employees of one of the organizations. And after that presentation, all employees that were there were asked what they contributed to this special criminal case. So what I remember is the secretary telling that she booked hotels and taxis for the public prosecutors that did that high-profile case. And the financial specialist told that he still manages the confiscated money and boat. So everyone was surprised what they contributed to this criminal case and make that a success. And that's what task significance is about. That makes you proud, and pride motivates people. So maybe this small example can help you in your working areas with different products and different services. Who knows? So this was a lot of information, I think, in short 15 minutes, and I hope some of it will resonate and inspire you the coming days, months, years, and hope you think of this presentation then. Thank you so much.
Marianne, thank you very much. Some food for thought for all of us, I think, because I think everybody has an opinion on retention and what level of skills should we want to retain.
Yeah.
Let's hand it over to Artir. Artir,
I'm here.
the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marianne, for your excellent presentation. Fortunately, we are starting to see employees as social capital and no longer as replaceable resources, as Gerard Eckhart mentioned in the Good Morning session from some 8 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, we also heard Sir George Woods explaining the relationship between leadership, culture, and behavior. And he did that in a very concise manner. So I would like to play this little piece. It's only 11 seconds, so pay attention. So it's that simple. This relationship. So culture is important to get results, but it's also a driver for people to leave the company. To my belief, this brings us back to the leaders. It's good to have a tight labor market in the Netherlands, so we need to make more efforts to retain our staff, and leaders should ask themselves what culture they are creating. In my work as a student counselor, I assess all problem statements for the dissertations of my students, and a lot of the problem statements involve employee satisfaction or retention, and also how to improve the onboarding process so that newcomers do not leave within a year or so. Some percentages of this leaving of 30 or 40% are common. So imagine the cost of that. Exit interviews might be important to get a grip on this problem. Also, management of change is impossible. Change of the working environment has a huge impact, and people identify with their work. So if you change something someone has been doing for decades, then you have to realize that you're messing with someone's identity. It's not enough to follow the 8 steps of Kotter, who emphasizes communication and creating pressure with this. More attention to the transition is required. I read an article of Bridges, who explains this relation lovely. If you like, I can put it in the chat, if you like. I have a question for Marianne, because the first question is the job itself more important, or the culture in which the job has to be done? Marianne, can you?
Yeah. Thank you for your good question, Arthur. It's a difficult one. I think culture is most important. But I think if you want to do something as a leader, you need some aspects you can influence. And culture is too big to influence. So that's why I think knowing drivers on the job itself will help you more, how do you say that, more in short term. But I think culture and leadership in culture is most important. We all know the people don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses. That's what's often heard. That's not completely true if you I think if you read a lot of research, but bear that in mind. It's not always about bosses, it's not about the person, it's sometimes about the leadership or the culture of the organization, and of course there's always a bad boss. But so a long answer in your short question is I think culture is most important and you have to try to influence that, but you can do some actions already using the key drivers I mentioned today.
And then the impact for the company it's not just money, I think. It's also the impact on the colleagues. So the colleagues lose and the organization loses something.
Yeah, true. On the first sheet, I had a few bullets in a picture because retention influences a lot in your company. It's about performance, it's about well-being, it's about keeping your knowledge on board. So retention is not only about money. To be honest, it's not about money. I think it's more about continuing your organization.
Continuity.
Yeah, continuity.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned several driving factors for leaving, disrupting for retention, I would say. And yeah, you also mentioned the culture is hard to influence. Which are the factors that are easy to influence, but simply overseen or so?
I think
overlooked.
Well, I think it's about communication, but it's almost always about communication and taking your employees seriously. So you can do that as from today. If you don't already do that, but be aware that listening and attention is the thing that drives employees to stay with you. So as a leader, you can do that. And of course, culture and retention programs, it's an ongoing process, retention. It's not doing one thing, but it's a constant process you need to do. Just as you do recruitment. A lot of organizations have recruitment process, but not a retention process. So it's about, I think, communication and taking your employees seriously. That will help you right away.
Arthur, can I ask you the question? The clip that you played us, there was no sound. What was the point that you were trying to drive home with the clip of George Woods? Because there was no sound, so we were not sure.
You had no sound. You did not have the sound.
No, there was no sound.
Well, it was 11 seconds, so you had a fine silence of 11 seconds then. But it says leadership drives culture, culture drives results. That was it. It's that simple, but yet powerful. That's why I wanted to share it with you. Sorry about the sound.
No problem, Arthur.
It also sounds good for when I say it.
What we'd like to do now is to open. Thank you, Arthur, for your reflection. What we'd like to do now is open the floor for questions. I see that we have one question here in the chat box. Most of the time, employees abuse the freedom employers volunteer to achieve trust. How do we manage this abuse? That's for you, Marianne.
I think that's also depending on culture, to be honest, because in my organization, I don't, it's about leadership from trust. So I trust my employees, and if I give them freedom, about attention, I always talk to the employees. So I know who they are, I know what they do. So I don't have the thought that employees abuse freedom. I don't have that idea about this. So maybe, but it's maybe just I work in a government organization. Maybe it's different in other companies. But I think the key is leadership from trust.
Okay. And then another question. If high-skilled employees focus on their profession and not the organization, what can organizations do to get them to focus on the organization? Also because they will always want more challenges which might not be available in the organization.
Yeah, that's true. And you always want to keep your best employees and your talents. But I think it's also okay if some of the best employees go to another company after a few years, and maybe a few, like 20, not every 2 years. But what you can do is try to stretch. So maybe you can let them, if you look at the autonomy and the relatedness, maybe you can give a stretch assignment that is not on their profession, but on helping others. So give them some tasks to grow in other areas than only on their own profession. But keep in mind that highly skilled workers don't bond with the organization, but they can if you give them these opportunities to grow, because that's what drives them. I hope it's a bit helpful.
I'm sure. Then what do we call the strategy of dividing and ruling staff, the political type strategy that some employers adopt? Is it a good one or not?
I'm not really sure what we mean with that.
I think Friday you could clarify that, but I believe it's almost like an autocratic kind of dictatorial type of leading style. I think that he would be referring to, where we rule our staff. He wants to know if that is a good strategy or not.
Well, if I understand it right, no, I don't think a dictatorial style of leadership will help you, because think about the carrot and stick. It will get you exhausted as a leader, because if you only have extrinsic motivation by rewards and punishment, you still have to think about new carrots and sticks. And because it's short-lived, it's less than 6 months. So for me, it does not work. Of course, sometimes you have an employee you have to be a bit more close to and tell what to do. But I think in general, I believe that intrinsic motivation and helping people with that will make you better as a leader and not that much exhausted. It's not about work. Working hard is not the thing we want to do with leadership. I think it's having impact. And I think having impact on others is also a task significance for us as leaders. That will work with through intrinsic motivation and therefore trust.
Perfect. Then Zainab has a comment that she's made. She says, if leadership have built a culture of integrity, the abuse of freedom won't occur in an organization. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's very nice to say. Yeah, because you also as a leader have to invest not only in the task and the work to be done, but also the culture, as Arthur stated. And I think integrity, and it's also about attention and communication and talking to each other, will give you a good culture, an open culture, and that will help you to give freedom. But it's also what's first. You have to start somewhere. You have to start at a moment. So give freedom.
Yes. Then Eden has a question. We know there is nothing like absolute freedom. How do you define the boundaries of freedom employees should be exposed to?
Well, you hire your people to do the job. So for me, that's the boundary. It's not about freedom. Autonomy is not about doing what you want. Autonomy is having the freedom within certain rules of the organization, the culture, the job to be done, and you give some freedom within that. And I had the example of you can do a task 1 hour a day or a day a week. It's the same amount of time you invest. But of course, at some processes, some organizations, that's not possible. If you work in a cookie factory, you can't say, I do it once a week for 1 hour. So there are some repetitive jobs and there are some boundaries. But within these, the job you are paid for, you can give some autonomy. So define boundaries of freedom, that's a bit difficult to do in 2 minutes, I think, but think about this way. Of course, there are always boundaries.
Okay, then Femi asks, how does one balance financial reasons for employees leaving against the retention strategies discussed?
If I understand the question right, then it's easy because the retention process is 7 times more expensive. The recruitment process is 7 times more expensive than a retention process. So if you balance financial, of course, you always need new employees. That's normal. And you don't want to keep all your employees forever. That's not, you need new fresh blood, new insights. So the balance could be that you invest on recruitment and onboarding, but then retention starts right away from day -1, to be honest. But I would say both processes in place. And then the financial reason, you will always benefit by implementing a retention process.
Okay. And if you have employees that are wanting to leave specifically because of financial reasons, so they're wanting to, how can you influence them to stay with the retention strategies that you've given? So they're wanting more pay, so they're looking for better opportunities. But how do you stage that off with the retention strategies that you have?
Well, I think there's also cultural differences in this part because pay is more important in some cultures than in others. I think, well, this is a difficult question because I work within the government, so pay is not one of the drivers I can use, because in my organization, it's, well, there are boundaries. Okay. But I think in general, pay has to be sufficient. If people want to leave for €50, $50 more, I think they should go because they are not the employees I would like to have in my organization, because I'd like to have employees that think in motivation and about self development and helping colleagues. So I think maybe it's a bit of an easy answer because sometimes you need €50 or dollar more, but if the pay is sufficient, so the hygiene factor is in place, then I think pay is not something I use in my retention strategy. Okay. It's more on the other drivers.
Okay, we have had a lot of questions this morning. Unfortunately, we can't answer all of them because we finish 8:53 sharp. So thank you for all of those that have posted questions in the chat. Sorry, we can't answer them. Next week will be our 20th Good Morning BSN. And it will be leading effectively in high and low context cultures. Presenter will be Dr. Oki Okiri. And high context cultures are cultures such as China, Nigeria, Mexico, and Saudi Arabia. And low context, Netherlands, UK, US, and Germany. So we will see you next week. Thank you very much, Marianne, for your time and for the presentation. Highly appreciated and very much good food for thought for all of us, I believe. Thank you for the reflection, Artir. Well appreciated. And thank you to everybody that attended this morning's session. And we look forward to seeing you next week.